Hello and welcome everybody to the Lakers Outsiders podcast. We are here to break down a Laker win, something that hasn't come often since the month of November ended. Gary Kessler here as always, today joined by Jacob Rue. Jacob, how are you holding up?
I'm doing well. That was one of the more fun Laker games to watch in quite some time, probably since maybe that Grizzlies game. But I mean, that was a lot of fun to watch. Lakers are a lot of fun when they're not sucking, basically.
You get a little bragging rights in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, shockingly, all my friends that are Pacer fans are just happen to be asleep or just not replying to my text right now. So I'll be sure to let them know tomorrow.
Yeah, and funny how that works, right?
Yeah, awfully convenient. They were letting me have it when I had to sit at the Pacers-Laker game when the Pacers won. So turnabout's fair play.
And also joining us today is Hani Amadi. And Hani, I make a pretty conscious effort to wear Boise State stuff whenever you're here. So hopefully you're not too upset today.
Not school. I can barely even see them all the way at the top of the conference. So.
I mean, if we want to return the favor, I have a Duke shirt on underneath this, so I got your back, Connie.
Thanks, dude.
All right, I have to just make this a one-person podcast. Make it a Facebook Live. No, but the Lakers win tonight. They beat the Indiana Pacers, who were coming in pretty. They're coming in pretty hot. They, I think, won 7 of their last 8 games coming in. But, LA nightlife is still undefeated. So Lakers get the Pacers on a Friday night, and a strong second half propels them to a win. Jacob, since this is kind of your hometown team that we saw, Brandon Ingram matched up with Paul George tonight. How would you grade his performance?
I'm not even necessarily joking when I say it might have been an advantage Brandon Ingram tonight. This one of his better performances, specifically that third quarter. I think the Lakers had I think it was a 12-0 run, and it felt like he either scored or set up every bucket during that run. I mean, he was aggressive. 14 shots tonight is quite a lot for him. There were a couple times I tweeted during one of them. There was I think an offensive rebound. Tarek Black kicked it out, and Ingram had a guy relatively close to him, and then just immediately caught it and shot it. And it just he buried it from 3, and it just kind of took me back because, I mean, that's just such an aggressive move that he hasn't been doing. So, I mean, I know he didn't match his career high. He came a little bit, I think his career high 17, but came a little bit short. But, I mean, he's been playing so well in January, and this is just another great game for him.
Yeah, he had a 3, I think, in the fourth quarter that kind of went halfway down and came out. That would have given him his career high. But, Honey, he was everywhere in the third quarter, and really he kind of sparked everything in the second half that really kind of launched the Lakers forward, and they didn't look back.
Yeah, I think he had 10 points in the third quarter, if I'm not wrong. And, he was kind of everywhere. He was doing a little bit of everything, spacing the floor a little bit, getting – kind of closer to the bucket, getting some mid-range shots off the dribble that were going in, and then defensively he was making some plays, getting rebounds. Got one. There was one steal where he basically dove to the floor, and his long arms just got it from like 15 feet away from him, and he ignited the break that way. He had a steal and a dunk. No, never mind. That's a different game. But he had a steal and a pass for a bucket at one point. He did a little bit of everything, and that's kind of like the ultimate ceiling that you see from Brandon Ingram is that he could do a little bit of everything. He can score in different ways. He's got a playmaking ability, and he's a really good defender. And then tonight was basically the perfect example of what he can be.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm excited to see that he played really well in such a big matchup against a player that is really good. I was watching Paul George on defense tonight, just the different guys he ended up matching up against, and just like, man, the Lakers could really use a guy like that, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where he was making it really hard for the Lakers to dribble penetrate and just being really disruptive. But yeah, I mean, Ingram went toe to toe with him, and I think if you went into this game and somebody told you Ingram and Paul George are basically going to be a wash, if you're the Lakers, you absolutely take that, and you feel pretty confident that you can win the game.
And you probably take that thinking that Paul George had like a really bad night, not that Brandon Ingram had a really good night.
Yeah. I mean, and George played. I mean, he didn't have like a massive performance or anything like that, but he had 21 points, 8 of 15, shooting, 6 rebounds in 36 minutes. So, obviously he's capable of more, but it wasn't like he went out there and just was throwing up bricks and just not really being effective. So I mean, it was interesting. It was interesting to see how aggressive he was. And Jacob, do you think? I mean, it's got to be kind of natural because we saw Ingram get 14 shots in 32 minutes. Just getting more shot attempts, I think, gets him a little more engaged. Wouldn't you say? Yeah,
I think Ben Rosales tweeted something to that effect, that a good barometer of just how engaged Ingram is simply just looking at how many field goal attempts he's taken in a game. In a game like tonight, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but 14 probably has to be fairly close to a season/career high. And he just seemed like really aggressive. He was taking it to the rim, which he's never really been afraid of. Went 3 of 6 from 3, and like you said, couple different steals, couple kind of pinpoint passes. I know one of them on a fast break to Calderon, and I tweeted during the game, he's 19. Like, this is unbelievable to watch. He's 19 and just went toe to toe with Paul George and helped the Los Angeles Lakers win a basketball game at 19. That's just unreal to think about. It makes me feel like such a slacker with my life.
and he won't turn 20 until September. Like, that's the crazy thing, is he's not even close to turning 20. So no, it's great to see, but I feel like collectively from the young guys, it was a pretty good performance tonight. Zubats had some moments. He only played 6 minutes. He only played, I think, in that the early stretch of the game, but he was effective. He was effective offensively. Defensively, Al Jefferson kind of took it to him a little bit, but that was kind of a funky matchup for him. As you don't really see a lot of back to the basket kind of guys anymore in the NBA. It's a lot of big guys are kind of used more in pick and roll settings, or they space the floor and things like that. So that was kind of a different matchup, but he found ways to be effective on offense. So that was nice to see. We saw a ton of missed dunks in this game. Honey, what's going on with the missed dunks? Should we be more excited that they're getting these dunks, or more upset that they're missing them?
Oh man, I'm upset just because Timothy Mozgov doesn't do a whole lot, but when he dunks, it's really fun to at least like tweet about it. And I was on the Lakers Outsiders tweets tonight, and I really wanted to make at least one Russian joke, and he missed 2 dunks. I'm really upset.
He had that alley-oop that, I mean, it looked like there's no way he misses this. And I think he tried to dunk it so hard that he ended up clanking it off the rim.
And the second one he was going to put somebody on a poster. And I feel like he jumped from like the free throw line. He jumped so early.
Air Russia, man.
He almost Mozgov'd somebody.
He was rushing to get that dunk off.
Oh, dear God. Didn't know Anthony Irwin was on this podcast, but here we are. Lou Williams also had a really stellar performance tonight. 27 points off the bench in 29 minutes, 7 of 15 from the floor, 3 assists, 4 rebounds. We talked about Lou last night on the podcast a little bit, and kind of he's taken away from like Russell's minutes and that whole discussion. But honey, I mean, when he's playing this well, like, you've got to throw him out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's helping you win games, especially late in games. 2 straight games now where he's been just on fire in the fourth quarter. Almost brought them back against the Nuggets, and then this time he basically put the dagger to make sure that they finished this one off. Yeah, when he's playing that well and he's shooting that well, and he's passing the ball pretty well and trying to get others involved, then it's really hard not to play him more.
Yeah, and you've got to reward him for his play. And we talked like I said yesterday on the podcast about it's a little different this year. And I tweeted this out during the game, but I think honestly, you could argue that this has been his best season in the NBA, and he's 30 years old. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's pretty crazy. Jacob, do you think? I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but what do you think Lou could realistically haul the Lakers in a trade before the deadline?
Well, I will just add to your point real quick. I actually compared the season he won Sixth Man and this year, and just across the board, it's a better year for him. I mean, and I think somebody mentioned it. I know Eric Gordon is kind of seen as the runaway Sixth Man of the Year vote or winner, but I also looked at. I mean, Lou Williams compares pretty much dead even with him in less minutes. I wouldn't say by any means it's a runaway for Eric Gordon right now. Lou Williams is right there in the hunt for that. But yeah, I mean, I do think the Lakers need to trade him. He's 30 years old. He's not going to be – you can't expect him to be a contributor by the time the Lakers are competing for the playoffs and for a title again. I mean, that's still probably –
I mean, he won't be under contract.
Well, yeah, also that. But I mean, he's on a very friendly contract given the cap. He's willing to come off the bench. I mean, he's just like the perfect type of trade candidate. As far as what they can get for him, I mean, if Kyle Korver can get you a first rounder, Lou Williams has to. And I would think at this point you're gonna have a team's gonna have to add like a mid-level prospect of some sorts because I mean, Lou Williams is just playing out of his mind, and like I said, I mean, he's a guy that's willing to come off a bench. Any playoff team would love to have the scoring that he provides off the bench. I mean, the team that always came to mind, I mean, Milwaukee has Dellavedova playing kind of crunch time minutes for him. Lou Williams is a much better option, and just teams like that need to make a playoff push, and he'd still be under contract next year too. That only adds to his value, and is another reason I think that the Lakers need to deal him this trade deadline. His stock is never going to be higher than it is right now.
Yeah, I keep looking at a team like the Thunder. A team that could probably use another piece to really kind of vault themselves into maybe the upper echelon of the Western Conference, even though I don't think it's anything that would put them over the top. But and they have I think the kind of the contracts to make it work, because they have a trade exception I think from Ersan Ilyasova that they could kind of throw in there that would make the money work while giving up a cheap player that wouldn't necessarily match Lou's contract. But I don't know. There's certainly some teams that would make sense, especially with that Detroit Pistons rumor today trading Reggie Jackson for Rubio. Is like maybe if they're looking for a guard, maybe Lou Williams can go in there and net the Lakers a first rounder. I don't know. Hani, do you think with the Lakers, with the 8 seed being what it is, and the Lakers still kind of being in that hunt, do you think that might prevent the Lakers from trading Lou before the deadline because they're kind of still in that mix?
Yeah, it's definitely a consideration. I think for the most part, they've been pretty open about the fact that they're still thinking about development and not so much thinking about wins and getting to the playoffs. And this is like the first year in the last 3 or 4 that they've been pretty open about that, and they haven't said that we're still trying to get to the playoffs or whatnot. So I think from that perspective, if they get a good enough trade for him, they'd be more than willing. But I also don't expect them to be necessarily calling other teams and trying to gauge his value and finding out if anybody wants to trade for him.
Yeah, I certainly don't think that they're going to just settle just to unload his contract or whatever, because I was looking at his numbers before this game, and per 36 minutes, he's only playing about 25 minutes a game this year, and per 36, he's averaging 26 points and 5 assists. So I mean that's remarkable production, and it's been some of the most efficient basketball he's played in his whole career. So to be fair, a lot of people think he's just kind of a one-on-one ISO player, which a lot of times he is, but he's actually third on the team in assists per game. So, he's been, and I wrote about that earlier in the year, but he's been just better overall at creating offense for the Lakers, both for himself and for teammates. I know he's liked to throw a lot of lobs this year.
I was ready to say he's been really good in the pick and roll this year.
Yeah, so with Larry Nance Jr. coming back on Sunday, hopefully I think he's going to be playing in some limited minutes, but there's another lob target for him to go with. So we'll see. That'll be an interesting thing to watch here in the next month or so. I guess I'm good either way. I mean, if it nets them an asset, that's great. But if they want to maybe wait until next year when it's an expiring deal, I don't know. I guess we'll see. But Lou's been a really good piece for them this year. So we'll just have to wait and see how that unfolds. But speaking of players and injuries, we said Larry Nance will come back. Nick Young got hurt today, but he was able to play again, or return in the second half. Looked to be okay, even though he threw up a couple air balls. He either seemed to airball every shot or make it. There was kind of no in between. So classic Swaggy P shooting 11 of his 13. Shooting 11 of his 13 shots were three-pointers. So never changed, Nick Young. Never changed. But another injury that was a little more concerning was right after tip-off. D'Angelo Russell got his leg tangled with, I think, Julius Randle's, and suffered a right MCL sprain and a strained calf. He seemed to be in relatively good spirits after the game. They were asking him about it. He just said he was kind of sore, but he said he thinks he's all right. But they'll have an MRI, I believe, tomorrow to kind of determine that. Jacob, if Russell's out for an extended period of time, I mean, this has to be like the worst time possible, right? With so many road games coming up.
I mean, we saw how bad they were last time he was out. There's not really a good time for him to be out because he just does so much for the Laker offense. He's really the only guy that can create for others just kind of naturally. I mean, for as much credit as we just gave Lou Williams, he's not really a point guard. He's more of a combo guard, and we've seen how much Jordan Clarkson's kind of regressed in that manner this year. So, I mean, Jose Calderon did all right tonight. He was a +2 in 20 minutes, but I mean, I don't really want to be relying on Jose Calderon too much. This would be – I'm hoping he seemed to be in pretty good spirits about it. It looked more just kind of like an awkward fall and just banging his knee on the ground.
Yeah, he did say that his knee kind of mainly hurt because of that, because he banged his knee. Yeah,
I mean, everybody, maybe rightfully so, kind of panicked a little bit, but I think once the initial fear wore off, it didn't seem like it was anything kind of – he landed a little awkwardly, but it didn't seem like awkward to the point of like tearing something. It just seemed more like he banged knees with Randle and then banged knees with the ground. So I'm hoping, crossing my fingers. I know somebody tweeted he's getting an MRI tomorrow, and the MRI machine's been pretty lucky for us so far this year. So fingers crossed. Yeah, knock on wood, absolutely.
Yeah, no. I guess the one good thing with their upcoming schedule, and I mentioned this before we went on live, but after this 3-game road trip that ends in the middle of next week, I think on Wednesday, they get 4 days off between that last road game and then the Nuggets that they play at home again. So I mean that's good that they have a relatively long layoff before their home game, and then they go on the road for, I think, their Grammy road trip. So. But yeah, no, they definitely need him. He's still their best playmaker on the team. So it's definitely something that you got to have. But um, I was just thinking about this, and I've been thinking about this all day. This is kind of going back to Lou Williams just for a second. But am I the only one that's thinking that Jordan Clarkson should be kind of worried about being traded as well? Like, Hani, am I crazy, or could I'm not saying it's likely or anything, but I've thought about the possibility of the Lakers trading Clarkson instead of Lou Williams and finishing out this season with just one of the two.
I wouldn't expect it this season at all, but if there's one young player out of the the main 5 young guys that they have, or 6 or however many there are, I think Clarkson would be the guy that they would be most willing to trade, just because his contract is big enough to get you a pretty big piece back, and then I don't want to say this in a way that is certain by any means, but it kind of looks like he's already kind of tapped his potential, and he hasn't really improved from last year too much.
Yeah.
So in terms of potential, you're not really looking at him as being one of the few young guys that could turn into a star. So there's a potential there that they could trade him, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and some other teams might look at him and say, he's still 24 years old. There still might be some potential there that you can kind of squeeze out of him. But no, I was just kind of thinking about that, because you kind of think like, you want because they're very similar in the way they play, and they're especially their role with this team, which kind of sometimes makes for an awkward fit, I think. And I think moving forward, they're going to have to, at least maybe next season, they're going to have to probably just roll with one of the two and probably have to trade either Lou or Clarkson, which conventional wisdom says, you trade the older guy. That might probably get you some more return. But, I mean, like you said, Hani, Clarkson's contract makes it a little easier for you to get a more significant player, whereas Lou, I think you'd mainly trade kind of for like a draft pick and then, maybe just a kind of an expiring deal or something like that. But I don't know. I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. Jacob, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the point you brought up, the redundancy between the two of them, at times hurts both of them, and it seems like it's hurting Clarkson a little bit more lately. I mean, at their core, they're both just kind of score first combo guards that, sometimes, I mean, they're maybe underrated passers at times, but they're not really true point guards. I mean, there's a lot about them that are similar. And right now, Lou Williams has got the hot hand, and he's the one they're kind of running with right now, and Clarkson's kind of taking a back seat. I think, that could be another case for trading Lou Williams, is just opening up not just more playing time for Clarkson, but it would I would imagine it would put the ball in his hand more and just kind of open up the offense as a whole. I think the fact that both of them are there, and you could kind of throw Nick Young in that argument too, that they're just all three so redundant in their skill set that it seems right now that Clarkson is the one that's kind of suffering the most from it.
Yeah, no. Oh, go ahead, Honey.
I was going to say, it feels kind of weird that we are saying that we're redundant, and I don't necessarily disagree, but like when you look back at Clarkson's rookie year, once he actually started playing because Ronnie Price got hurt.
What a sentence.
He was a really good passer. Like he was an actual point guard for them, and I think he had like an assist rate of 20% or something like that, and he's like in the low teens right now. And he and Tariq Black especially had really good pick and roll chemistry, and they were playing really well that second half of that year. So it feels kind of weird to me that he does seem so redundant, and I feel like there's a chance that if he's put in better positions, and I don't even know if that necessarily includes trading Lou or not, but in certain positions, I think he could still get back to that. Because I don't think right now off the bench, he's kind of like the only guy that can create. I mean, Brandon Ingram's kind of doing it, but as a guy that penetrates into the defense a lot, I think he's probably the only one, and I think he would benefit from playing someone next to someone like Russell, so that Clarkson doesn't have to be the primary guy that passes everyone the ball, but like the secondary person, the guy that you kick out to and he can still kind of bend defenses.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I mean, obviously trading one of those three kind of two guards creates more minutes for Russell, which we've talked about a lot over the last 2 days. And maybe some more minutes for Ingram at the 2 or something. It opens up, it kind of clears a logjam of what you were saying, Jacob, just kind of a skill set that's so similar between the 3 players. And it might make things just flow a little bit better. It might be a little bit easier for Luke, but there's times it doesn't look like a very good fit, with between those 3 because they kind of offer some of the same things. So,
and it's been a kind of a really I'm trying to think of the word. Just the learning curve has been real steep, I think, for Clarkson because he's more or less moved into a shooting guard role, and I'm looking. His usage percentage is actually the highest it's been in his career, but and his assist percentage is the lowest. His rookie year, he had a 23% usage, 23.8% assist percentage. This year, it's 23.4 usage, 13.2 assist percentage, so 10% lower. I think one thing Pete Zayas, Laker Film Room, talked about kind of this very thing on his pod. Clarkson's being used in different ways than he was his rookie year. His rookie year, it was a lot of just kind of right in the middle of the court, pick and roll with Tark Black, full head of steam right at the rim, and you can drive and kick to, Wayne Ellington, Wes Johnson, whoever it was. Now he's more coming off screens or the pick and rolls or to the side where you can't just get a full head of steam and run at the basket. So I think the learning curve for him might be it has been kind of steep, but I wouldn't. The Lakers traded him over Lou Williams. I can only imagine the backlash on Twitter. But that just doesn't seem, after preaching, patience and developing youth, that would be just a huge contradiction to everything. You'd have to. That's pretty much going. If you did that, it would be going all in on trying to get the 8th seed this year, which would just get you destroyed by the Warriors in 4 games. So, it would just be kind of a weird move to make.
Yeah, no, and one name I threw out earlier in our group chat was, not that I'm saying that this is likely or anything, but Jrue Holiday is in the last year of his deal, and there was that report the other day that the Pelicans were worried or concerned that he's going to walk after this season. So I don't know, maybe if you're the Lakers, you dangle Clarkson and, say a second rounder or some other, piece that might entice them into it. But I don't know.
I'll only do that deal if we get Buddy Hield back.
Oh God, here we go with Jacob and his Buddy Hield standing. But no, that was just one example of a player. Like I said, I don't know. I probably wouldn't imagine that New Orleans would do that. But, if they're genuinely afraid that he's going to leave them, you get Clarkson for, the rest of the season plus 3 more years on a pretty good contract. So, and with Clarkson's struggles too, it could just be, it's the first year in a brand new system, right? So, he could just play much better next year. A lot of guys, it takes them that second year in a new system to really kind of find their groove and figure out what they need to do and not do within the system to play more efficient basketball. So
I'll be kind of interested to see. When you kind of learn a new system like this, you spend all of training camp learning it, and then you don't really get a whole lot of time to learn it again. You get some practice, but it's mainly walkthroughs and whatnot. You're not really learning the system anymore at that point. You're kind of game planning for your opponents and whatnot. So like you said, the the second year is kind of when guys kind of start to figure it out. You get that second training camp, the whole summer really, and then the second training camp to really kind of get comfortable and figure it out. So, I mean, that's another reason why I don't think you give up on Clarkson now. And he's shown some signs this year. I mean, he's still averaging 14 points a game, which is more than he was his rookie season. And he's shooting. I mean, he's kind of hit and miss with his 3-point shooting, but I mean, his effective field goal percentage is the highest it's been in his career. His true shooting percentage is the same, so he's kind of become more of a shooting guard, less of a creator. But I do agree that he hasn't progressed, I guess, the way a lot of us expected him to. So it has been a little disappointing.
Yeah, he's kind of plateaued, I would say, this year, which is kind of disappointing because he's 24, but and is his defense too. Like I think he was the only young guy, that was a member of this core that really played, 2 full seasons with Byron's system and alongside Kobe, because Randall sat out. I mean, he missed that whole first year, and then he got the 1 year last year. So, I mean, Clarkson was, his first 2 years of his career were in such a flawed offensive system with, Kobe being Kobe and this and that. Whereas, the other guys got 1 year of it. And, so maybe it's just taking Clarkson a little bit more time to kind of shake it off. And I was just thinking of kind of recent examples of guys that did better in year 2 with the Lakers. And this is kind of a funky example. I'm not comparing the two or anything, but I remember when the Lakers signed Steve Blake. He came in and he really kind of struggled that first year. He had some moments, but then in his second season, he was just a lot better in the same system. So maybe that's kind of the thing with Clarkson with Luke's system, is that he just kind of needs to get a year under his belt, playing such a different style of basketball than he's played in the first 2 years of his career. And then maybe next year he'll kind of figure it out a little bit more. But I don't know. It'll be kind of interesting to watch. I hope for his sake and for his role with the team that he kind of just figures some things out and figures out his niche a little bit more. So,
I mean, just one last thing on that. It's kind of why we preach patience to everybody, or for every player. I mean, this isn't switching from like one system to the other. I mean, Byron didn't have a system last year. It's going from, whatever you want to call what Byron did last year to actually learning an offense and learning a system. So, I mean, on top of these guys being young players trying to figure it out in the NBA, they're also doing things that really they should have been doing their rookie year and learning offenses and whatnot. So, I mean, that's why everybody's just been – I know fans hate it, but, I mean, just be patient. I mean, just calm down, hold on. You have a whole bunch of really young guys who are figuring it out together, and then, 2 or 3 years, this team's just going to be so much fun to watch.
Well, and I always look at the Timberwolves as an example, because everybody kind of pegged them as the kind of probably the prime contender for that 8th spot in the West, which they could certainly still get it. I mean, that's up for grabs for everybody in the Western Conference, but they've certainly struggled this year, especially on defense. And they have some what I like to think is pretty good defensive talent, even though it's very young, with a guy that's built a defensive reputation in Tom Thibodeau. But for young guys, it's just hard. You're playing at the highest level. So it's going to take time for young guys to figure it out, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, we'll see. But, I mean, I don't know. It's weird to me, because there are a lot of times, too, where I don't really think of Clarkson as a young piece anymore, because it just feels like he's been around a little bit longer. But, he is 24. Like, he's not going to turn 25 until June. So –
is he the most tenured Laker on this team? Him and Randall?
Nick Youngest.
Oh, okay. So, but he's second. So, him and Randall and Tark Black. Well, Tark Black was right after them, but
Yeah.
Well, I guess MWP has a lot of years, but they weren't in succession. But yeah, I mean, technically, Jordan Clarkson is your second longest tenured Laker, and he's 24. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully they just continue to develop, keep taking steps forward, like we've seen with Ingram in the month of January, and they fulfill their potential in the future. Which, speaking of the future, Paul George was in town tonight, as we mentioned, with the Pacers. And he's a free agent in 2018. So next summer, not this upcoming summer, but or he can be a free agent, but odds are he's going to be. But we've got to talk about it because I know there's a lot of Laker fans that have linked Paul George because he's from the LA area, went to Fresno State, which Hani and I can agree that is a terrible school.
We're beating them tomorrow, just saying. Paul George is going to have 2 L's to me.
But so Hani, I'm going to throw this to you first. I mean, what percentage right now, as of January 20th, 2017, what percentage would you say that Paul George would sign with the Lakers? Like, what are the odds?
Can I go over 100% or? No, but in all honesty, I would put it pretty low, just because he's going to be able to make a whole lot of money, and I don't want to get too deep into cap CBA talk because it's kind of boring. But basically, if he makes an All NBA team this year, he's going to be able to sign a super max extension with the Pacers, where he'd make over $200 million over 5 years.
yeah, it's
so if that's the case,
$250,000.
Yeah. So if that's the case, there's very little chance that he would not take that money and come to the Lakers. He'd have to really hate Larry Bird's guts, which isn't completely out of the
who doesn't, right?
possibilities.
On, he was a Celtic.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Hani was more pessimistic. Jacob, you gotta give me the optimistic side of this.
157% chance he was a Laker. I mean, realistically, like Hani said, I think it depends entirely on that Supermax extension or contract. I don't think it's an extension, but that Supermax deal, because nobody. I mean, you'd have to really hate your situation to turn down $250,000. I mean, I know he would. I don't know what his max would be elsewhere, but I mean, he's still going to get, probably close to $200 million. But I mean, it's very rare that a guy turns down. I mean, in recent, I can only think of Dwight and Al Horford who turned down, the big money to go somewhere else. So, I mean, if he doesn't qualify for the Supermax, I don't see this Indiana team as constructed, which the team they have now is the team they're going to have when Paul George hits free agency. Everybody's signed to long deals. Nobody's going anywhere.
It's going to hinge on Miles Turner a lot, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, you have guys. Monte Ellis isn't getting any better. Al Jefferson isn't getting any better. I mean, I would say Teague's probably in his prime now. In 2 years, he's going to be or in a year, I guess he's going to. I mean, just in general, the team that's there now is not that great and not that appealing.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't qualify for the Supermax, I can't imagine the Lakers not being one of the top teams he's interested in. He grew up in LA. I know he's a Clipper fan, or he grew up a Clipper fan, but I mean, the situation would be perfect for him. He can, come home, join a team that. I mean, it also a lot depends on how well the Lakers develop. Because I mean, if they're still winning, 25 games or something, they win 25 games again next year, Paul George isn't coming to that team.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to show a lot of development. They have to certainly be fighting for an 8 seed next year for him to want to come.
Mm-hmm. what I'm curious to see, because I mean, if the Lakers keep trending kind of the way they are, because they won 17 games last year, they just won their 16th game tonight, in mid-January. So they're on pace for I think high 20s, maybe close to 30 wins. So like if next year, say for example, they're like the 6th seed in the West, like 6, 7, 8 seed somewhere in there. I would say their timeline. Not that I'm saying it's likely or anything, because I think the last few years have really taught us to not really expect any big time free agents. That the Lakers are going to have to kind of build this thing from within, through the draft and build their own guys. But I will say that his timeline, I feel like, coincides pretty well with the way the Lakers are trending, because I think, like I said, if say they're the 6th seed, for example, and they're competitive, they're fun, they're obviously on the upswing. Paul George might look at that situation and say, I might be the missing piece. I could be the guy that puts that team over the top and makes them a contender. And you'd have to think with Russell and Paul George and Brandon Ingram out on the wing. I mean, that perimeter attack would be fantastic. And Ingram and Paul George defensively on the wing would be something that would be a lot of fun to watch. But also it kind of hinges on, if the Lakers want to go after some guys this summer, because I think, if they tie up more money, they're not even going to have enough, room to offer a max contract, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, there'd have to be some serious shifting around, and getting rid of either Deng or Mozgov's contract would be really, really difficult to do. So, yeah, I think this offseason will kind of answer that for us on whether they're at least going to go after him. But yeah, I guess if I had to put a percentage on it right now, I mean, 10 to 15%, maybe, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say about 5%. Assuming he gets the Supermax, which I think he probably will, I'd put it at like 0.01%. Without the Supermax, I would say, like 5, maybe 10%. Like, it's still, like I said, it's very rare that guys turn down the big money from their own team to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I said, if the last few years have taught us anything, it's to not expect, big time free agents. If it happens, awesome. But I don't think you can really kind of bank on that anymore. You just kind of have to hope that the next Lakers superstar is already on the roster. You just kind of have to hope that Ingram or Russell or whoever, turns into that, throughout these next few years. So, and I think that they certainly have the potential to do it. So I think they have the right coach to get it out of them. So, but it's going to take patience. Definitely going to take patience. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, especially if there's a lot more nights like tonight. Tonight, I had a blast watching this team. I had a blast watching Brandon Ingram, and I would have liked to see obviously Russell kind of get in on it, but hopefully he's okay and he'll be back relatively soon. So. Before we dive into it, we've got 2 questions that I saw. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it for me.
I mean, I'll just piggyback off what you said. I mean, when this team is playing like this, which is what they did at the beginning of the year, really, they're so much fun to watch. Like, it was dreadful watching them for a couple games. That second half of that Blazers game, the first 3 quarters against Denver, and a lot of that Detroit game was frustrating. So it was nice for them to finally come out. And really, I mean, except for I think a stretch there in the second quarter, I mean, they led pretty much the entire night and really for almost the entirety of the second half. So it's fun seeing that Lakers team come back again, and they should stay around and do this more often.
Yeah, the thing I like about this team that I've enjoyed is that, obviously they had the win against the Warriors. But I feel like most nights, unless they're playing like the elite teams like the Warriors, the Spurs, the Cavs, or whatever, I feel like whoever they match up against, I find myself saying like, they can beat this team. Like they can compete with most teams in the league. Whereas last year you were like, you're looking at like at Memphis and you're just like, oh God, we're gonna lose that game. And this year they went to Memphis and lost by 3, I think, and then they beat Memphis when they came here. So it's nice to see this team competes a lot harder than last year's team. And it's showing in the win column. They have 16 wins already. They're 1 away from matching their total from last year. So that's a lot of fun. I guess real quickly before we dive into the questions, where would you guys rank, Honey, you can start. Where would you rank this win in terms of all their 16 wins so far this year?
Ooh, that's tough. Okay, so the Warriors win is always fun just because it's like an annual thing now. And we obviously have their number. The Grizzlies game, I think, was a little bit more fun than this too, the one that they won. Just because that seemed like a really balanced game from all the young guys. And
you had the Nick Young hip thrusts.
Yeah, and the Jordan Clarkson shimmy.
Yeah.
There were 2 good gifts in that game. And then opening night was kind of fun too, just because you didn't know what to expect from this team, and that was just a fun game against the Rockets. And it obviously got everybody's expectations way too high, which we can see every time they lose a game now. But yeah, maybe after those 3 games, I think I would put this one.
Yeah, Jacob. I mean, it's got to be one of the either 3 or 5 best wins of the year, right?
Yeah, I would definitively put probably opening night. Winning on opening night's always fun. The Warriors game. I thought the Hawks game on the road was a lot of fun, and then early in the year, and then I'd say it's probably right there with that Grizzlies game. It didn't have a hip thrust to maybe the Grizzlies game goes ahead because of that, but yeah, I mean this is probably 3rd or 4th or 5th most enjoyable game, which 0 games were enjoyable last year except for Kobe's final one, so it's a huge improvement already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's definitely up there. But yeah, I'd have to say I think their most complete game was the Grizzlies game, both offensively and defensively. They were they were razor sharp. They didn't ever let up. There were no lapses, anything like that. I feel like that was their most complete 48-minute solid performance, and it showed. They kind of dominated a very good Grizzlies team. So, but it was nice. I'll say it was nice tonight. The Pacers missed, some opportunities, but I thought overall defensively the Lakers played just a lot better than they have. We had talked about yesterday the point totals that the Pacers were putting up, from like 110 to 120 pretty consistently over this recent stretch of games, and the Lakers hold them to 96. I don't know what kind of pace the game was played at. I feel like it was played at a pretty good pace. I mean, both these teams like to get up and push the tempo, but it just kind of goes to show when the Lakers get a couple days off, what they're able to do. And I tweeted out before we went on, kind of the NBA on NBA.com. They have the splits for 0 days rest, 1 day rest, 2 days rest, and the Lakers had one instance where there was 4 days rest, which they were awesome. But I can't remember what game that was. But they've only played 4 games this year where they've had 2 days off, this was the 4th one. And their net rating is negative 0.6, which when you look at 0 days rest and 1 day's rest, respectively, they're negative 8.8 net rating and negative 6.1. And the numbers are kind of like that across the board. So when they actually get some time off, time to practice and work on some things, it's kind of nice to see. But yeah, I don't know.
The pace tonight was 102.8, which I think the Pacers were about 90, just over 99 possession, 99, and then the Lakers were right around 100. So a little more sped up. I don't think it was I guess it could favor the Lakers a little bit, but I think the big thing was probably the turnovers by the Pacers and the just a ton of blown opportunities on fast breaks and whatnot.
Mhm.
So,
Which the Lakers had a lot of turnovers tonight too, which kind of I think goes to show with their defense that their defense is just overall better tonight. That they were able to kind of turn the ball over the way they did and still kind of keep Indiana's offense in check a little bit. So that was really encouraging to see. But let's dive into these two questions. The first question was, so Ingram is the next Durant or the next Paul George? Honey, I guess which of those two players could you see him being more like?
Oof. Can we go off the board and say Giannis Antetokounmpo?
You could if you want to do that.
No, it's weird. Like body-wise, he definitely looks like Kevin Durant, which is why the comparisons were made. But I do get why people compare him to Paul George now, like just the two-way capability, and I don't think he's as fluid as Kevin Durant in terms of how he handles the ball and how he gets into the paint. So Paul George, maybe slightly less athletic Paul George, that makes sense to me.
I think, Jacob, you can kind of compare him to one of the three, but I think it's fair to say if he turns out to be, any one of those three, you'd have to be ecstatic, right?
Yeah, I'd settle for one of those three. I do think, I don't know if how serious Hani was, but I do think Giannis is probably his closest comparison. I shout out to Mike Garcia, friend of mine, who big draft prospect guy. He had sent me his draft breakdown back in probably May, maybe earlier than that, of Brandon Ingram. And at the time, he compared him to Giannis. And that was when everybody was saying, oh, this is the next Durant. And admittedly, I kind of brushed it off a little bit, but he's doing a lot of things that remind you of Giannis. His crazy long arms, he's not quite as athletic as Giannis, but he is a better shooter.
Yeah.
I think just a direct comparison, he doesn't really directly compare to any of them, like Hani was saying, but I think he might be closest to Giannis, but he's still a long way from being that good.
And the thing with Giannis, if you look at both their rookie numbers, they're kind of close, honestly, which I found really interesting. Which it kind of serves as like a good reminder to people that that are freaking out about Ingram and his poor shooting and stuff like that. It's like Giannis wasn't what he is now his rookie year. Like it took him time, and he came in built kind of like Ingram was. Very they were all of them came in very, very skinny. There was questions about how they would handle the physicality of the NBA and everything along those lines. And because I remember Durant got dinged by a lot of people because he couldn't bench press 180 pounds or whatever. And I was like, I just remember thinking, it doesn't affect his ability to put the ball in the hoop, which he's very, very good at. So
he can pick up a basketball and throw it at the direction of a basket very well. So that's all the lifting he needs to do.
But when you look at Giannis, he's still, very kind of leanly built, but you could tell he's put on muscle and he's gotten a lot stronger. And you got to imagine Ingram's going to do the same thing. So I think that's a fair comparison. And I think if he becomes what Giannis has turned into, the Lakers will be very, very thrilled, and the Lakers will have a budding star player on their squad. So. The second and final question, we talked about Nance coming back, and our old pal of the show, Afa_Brain, says, with Larry Nance coming back into the rotation, who gets pushed out?
I think Thomas Robinson, I don't think he played. He played a little bit tonight. He fouled a 3-point shooter in 2 minutes of action, but I think he kind of gets his minutes are gone. I'm trying to look right now. Randall played 34 minutes. I think you may take some of his down to maybe about 30.
Mhm.
Tarek played 28 minutes. Take some of his down to something closer to maybe
Like
20
22.
minutes. Yeah, 20, 22 minutes. Mozgov played 24. If you take his down closer to 20. I don't think there's any one person that you take out of the lineup. I think you just collectively take minutes from a couple different guys.
Yeah. I mean, and he's definitely going to take away from Metal World Peace's 1 minute that he played tonight.
59 seconds, yeah.
Which the Lakers were +1 as soon as he entered the game. I know it doesn't count technically because he was in between free throws.
He actually finished -2 by the end
did
of
he
the
really?
game. But yeah, he was +1 in the first half.
He was +1 in meaningful minutes. Like, let's put it that.
I got so scared that he was gonna ruin the fact that the fans were gonna get free tacos again. He brought him in with like a minute something left, and I was like, oh no, he's gonna foul everybody for the next minute.
That would be, I don't know, that would be like classic Metal World Peace. They would instantly go from like giving him the loudest ovation of the night to, just booing him off the court.
You guys ready for this one? Meta World Peace's offensive rating tonight. His defensive rating was 100. Offensive rating of 69.4. He had a negative 30.6 net rating tonight.
Can't win them all. Can't win them all. No, honey, you agree with Jacob that they just kind of trim minutes from multiple guys.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just really hard to take a lot of minutes from one guy because pretty much everybody that plays deserves some. I think we're probably not going to see Thomas Robinson play a lot of minutes or any minutes for the near future.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And AFA also asked us which teams would have interest in Lou. We kind of ran through that earlier. We listed the Thunder, the Pistons. Jacob, you listed Milwaukee.
Orlando, maybe they were talking, I guess, to Miami about Dragic. So I mean, maybe
they were
they're
going to
interested.
They were going to give first and Nikola Vucevic for Dragic.
Wow, they do have quite the logjam with their front court. They've got Aaron Gordon playing at the 3 a lot. So, honey, are there any specific teams that kind of jump out to you?
I think those are the main ones. Lou's kind of a weird guy because he's really hard to fit into a roster. I would say if the Raptors decide to trade for a power forward like Millsap or somebody and they end up sending Terrence Ross, then they might want Lou Williams back as that sort of same kind of player.
Yeah, definitely. I kept thinking of Chicago too, although the contracts don't really line up all that well. But it would be nice if they had somebody that could actually shoot. So
then they could have 4 alphas.
So yeah, but no, there's definitely going to be some teams that would make sense, but
kind of going off both the last 2 topics we talked about, I think somebody to keep an eye on is for the Lakers to possibly be traded is Tarek Black. He's on a really friendly contract. I mean, we're talking about where Nance fits in getting minutes, and we didn't even bring Zubats. I mean, he only played 6 minutes tonight. I mean, there's certainly not enough minutes for Randall, Tarek, Mozgov, Zubats, and Nance in the same rotation. So I mean, Tarek would be – I know that you were talking about the Spurs earlier. I mean, he could be somebody you could ship off, kind of in a deal by itself. But I see him as like a really nice secondary piece, maybe in a Lou Williams trade.
Mm-hmm.
You trade Lou Williams, or you trade for Lou Williams, and you get a backup center as well, and maybe it becomes not just a first-round pick. Or a late first, maybe it's like a mid-teens first, or maybe a little bit better prospect, or maybe they throw in a second-round pick. But I do think, especially with how well Zubats has played lately, that Tarek has kind of become expendable.
And you got to think if they add a first-rounder and then they somehow keep theirs in the top 3, I mean, that's you've got a lot of trade chips to kind of work with, and if you want to try to acquire kind of a more established player. So that'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds. But I don't know. I have a hard time picturing them trading Lou Williams, which probably means now they actually will. So I look like an idiot. But yeah. Anything else you guys wanted to touch on before we sign off?
I'm going to throw one more team out there, especially if Tarek it does get included. The Cavs kind of make sense because they want a veteran point guard, and Lou's not a traditional point guard, but he could at least fill that hole, and then they need a little bit of size. Only thing that makes it kind of weird is that they don't really have first-round picks to trade.
Yeah, they just traded their first rounder this year, I think, for Corver. So
yeah. They don't really have anything. I mean, isn't DeAndre Wiggins like really old too? Yeah. So I mean, I think we could get a better return than K. Felder. I would hope so.
So what about maybe Lakers Summer League killer Jordan McRae?
Maybe then that turns into like a 3-team trade or something though. So
yeah,
there's always that possibility. But all right, anything else before we sign off?
That's it for me.
Go Lakers!
All right, yep. The Lakers get a big win tonight. They stay within 4 games of the 8th seed, which is so weird to say. But no, like I said, LA Nightlife stays undefeated. Tonight was fun. Tonight was a lot of fun to watch that game unfold and to see Ingram play with the confidence he played with and how effective he was. Hopefully he continues that because he's been doing that for the entire month of January. So it's exciting. It's exciting. We'll see the Lakers actually go on the road now for 3 games before coming back to play the Nuggets again at home, and then they go on the road again for a pretty lengthy road trip. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully the Lakers can kind of build off of this win and get some momentum going and hopefully match their win total in their next game, which feels weird to say this early in the season. But thank you to everybody that tuned in, asked us questions, subscribe to us. Like I mentioned, every podcast you can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and on iTunes. If you ever want to, check out our old podcasts, see some old hot takes that I'm sure are probably kind of bad now, you can always do that. You can follow Hani at HONIAHM on Twitter. Jacob is at Jacob Rude. And then myself, I'm at Gary Kessler, and you can follow us at Lakers Outsiders and like us on Facebook. That's going to do it for us. Lakers get a big win tonight, and now they hit the road against Dallas on Sunday. Larry Nance back in the lineup, so we'll see how it goes. Hopefully they can finally get over the hump against a bad Dallas Mavericks team. But until then, go Lakers, and good night.